Hands on the car. Now, I'm talking to you. Officer, you are making a serious mistake. A mistake that will have procedural and financial consequences. The only one facing consequences here is you, for contempt of cop and resisting. Now turn around. You're under arrest. This exchange, captured at 2:36 p.m. on April 12, 2023, marks the precise moment a career in law enforcement was irrevocably destroyed by a single, prejudiced assumption. The official record of this incident, cataloged as Case File 734, details an encounter in the subterranean parking garage of a luxury Georgetown condominium in Washington, D.C., an event that escalated from a routine patrol into a flagrant abuse of authority. The antagonist in this documented event was Officer Kevin Dunn, a 38-year-old with 12 years of service on the D.C. Metropolitan Police Force. His file contained 3 prior excessive force complaints, each one meticulously investigated and subsequently dismissed by Internal Affairs, a pattern that suggested an underlying issue with authority and de-escalation. The target of his misplaced authority was the Honorable Evelyn Hayes, 41, a United States federal judge for the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, a woman whose entire professional life was dedicated to the impartial application of the law. The entirety of the incident was captured from multiple angles, recorded with indisputable clarity by Officer Dunn's own body camera and the building's comprehensive CCTV system. The fallout was swift and severe, resulting in the officer's termination from the force, a subsequent criminal conviction, and a civil settlement that ultimately cost the taxpayers of the District of Columbia exactly $1.5 million. This is the factual, frame-by-frame account of how a baseless bias led to a catastrophic miscalculation, validating the very authority it sought to undermine. The chain of events that would culminate in this legal and financial disaster began with the mundane. The day had been ordinary, structured by the discipline that defined Judge Hayes' life both on and off the bench. Her morning had started before sunrise with a review of pretrial motions for a complex interstate racketeering case. By mid-afternoon, she had completed her daily 5-mile run along the C&O Canal towpath, a ritual that served to clear her mind of the dense legal arguments and human dramas that populated her courtroom. Now, back in the quiet, echoing concrete expanse of her building's residential garage, she was engaged in the simple task of unloading groceries from the back of her dark gray Audi Q5. The cool, conditioned air of the garage hummed with the low thrum of the ventilation system, a stark contrast to the warm spring air outside. She was dressed in simple, high-quality athletic wear, her focus entirely on the task at hand, transferring bags of fresh produce and household staples from the vehicle to a small cart. Her movements were efficient and deliberate, betraying a mind accustomed to order and precision. This private space and this simple routine was her sanctuary from the immense weight of her responsibilities. Here, she was not a federal judge, weighing the fates of others. She was simply a resident, a woman, returning home. The fluorescent lights overhead cast long shadows on the polished concrete floor, reflecting faintly off the clean lines of her car. It was a scene of perfect, unremarkable domesticity in one of Washington's most affluent neighborhoods. It was this very scene of normalcy that, through the distorted lens of prejudice, would be interpreted as a criminal anomaly. As Judge Hayes reached for the last grocery bag, the silent hum of the garage was interrupted by the soft crunch of tires. A D.C. Metropolitan Police patrol car, Unit 714, rolled slowly down the ramp and turned into her aisle. At the wheel was Officer Kevin Dunn, halfway through a long and uneventful shift. From his perspective, the image before him did not compute. His internal calculus, shaped by 12 years on the force and a deeply ingrained set of biases documented in his service record, saw a collection of elements that he perceived as contradictory. A black woman, dressed in workout clothes, standing next to a $60,000 vehicle in a private, high-security garage. His mind did not process this as a resident returning home. It processed it as a situation that required investigation, a deviation from his personal expectation of the demographic of this neighborhood. He saw not a person, but a puzzle that, in his view, had a likely criminal solution. The official psychological review conducted after the incident, found in Addendum B of the Internal Affairs Report, would later conclude that Officer Dunn exhibited strong confirmation bias, actively seeking evidence to support his initial prejudiced assumptions while dismissing any information that contradicted them. He slowed the vehicle to a stop, his eyes narrowing slightly. He did not see a federal judge. He did not see a homeowner. He saw a target for his authority, an opportunity to impose order where he perceived none. He switched off the engine. The sudden silence of the garage amplified the tension. The decision was made. He was going to make contact. The click of his door opening echoed off the concrete walls, a sharp, metallic sound that signaled the end of a peaceful afternoon and the beginning of a life-altering confrontation.
He had already tried and convicted her in his mind, and the sentence he was about to erroneously impose would backfire with a procedural and financial force he could never have imagined. Officer Dunn's exit from the patrol car was deliberate, a performance of authority for an audience of one. The CCTV footage, time-stamped at 2:33 p.m., shows him adjusting his duty belt, his movements stiff and purposeful as he approached. His expression, captured in a grainy but clear close-up by his own body camera as he activated it, was a mask of professional neutrality that failed to conceal the condescending judgment in his eyes. He stopped several feet from Judge Hayes, positioning himself in a classic field interview stance, blading his body slightly as if anticipating a threat where none existed. He did not introduce himself or offer a reason for his presence. His opening words were a command, not a query, delivered in a flat, demanding tone. "Good afternoon. License and registration." Judge Hayes, who had been placing a carton of milk into her grocery cart, did not startle. She completed the motion with practiced ease before turning to face him. Her posture remained relaxed, her gaze direct and inquisitive. The audio recording from Dunn's vest captured the utter lack of fear or agitation in her voice, a fact that would be heavily emphasized in the subsequent civil deposition. "Good afternoon, officer. For what reason am I being stopped?" The question was simple, direct, and procedurally correct. For Officer Dunn, it was an immediate act of defiance. His internal monologue, later surmised by forensic psychologists reviewing the footage, interpreted her composure not as the mark of an innocent citizen, but as the insolence of a criminal. "You look suspicious," he stated, the accusation hanging in the sterile air of the garage. "You don't look like you belong here. Now, the documents." The prejudice was no longer an undercurrent, it was the stated basis for the stop. Judge Hayes's expression remained unchanged, but a subtle shift occurred in her focus. She was no longer a resident unloading groceries, she was a legal scholar observing a flawed legal process. "Looking like I don't belong does not constitute reasonable suspicion, as established by Terry v. Ohio," she replied, her tone perfectly even, as if dictating a legal brief. "However, my documents are in my purse inside the car. I live here." She gestured calmly toward the Audi. This dispassionate, factual correction was gasoline on the fire of Dunn's preconceived narrative. He saw her knowledge of case law as a weapon against him. He took a single, aggressive step forward, closing the distance between them. "Who owns this car?" he demanded, his voice taking on a sharper edge. "Who do you work for here?" Each question was a test, designed to force an admission that would validate his initial bias. He was not seeking information, he was seeking confirmation of her otherness, of her unworthiness to occupy this space. The standoff intensified, a silent battle of wills recorded with irrefutable clarity. For a full 2 minutes and 47 seconds, a period that would later be scrutinized frame by internal affairs investigators, Officer Dunn physically barred Judge Hayes from retrieving her identification. His instructions were contradictory and designed to create a pretext for escalation. "Stay where you are," he commanded when she moved toward her car door. Then, moments later, "I told you to get your documents. Why are you being difficult?" The body camera footage reveals the sheer irrationality of his behavior. His breathing grew audible, a harsh counterpoint to the ambient hum of the garage ventilation. Judge Hayes, in stark contrast, remained a pillar of composure. She made another attempt at de-escalation, her strategy shifting from legal citation to simple, verifiable facts. "Officer, my name is Evelyn Hayes. My key fob, which opens the door to the lobby, is on my car keys right here in my hand. My driver's license, which will confirm my identity and my address at this location, is in my wallet, inside my purse on the passenger seat. I am fully prepared to cooperate with a lawful request, but you have yet to provide a lawful basis for this stop." She was offering him a clear path to retreat, a way to end the encounter without losing face. It was a lifeline he refused to take. The precision of her language, the absence of any emotional plea, was perceived by Dunn as a profound insult. "I am the law here," he shot back, his voice rising in volume and pitch. "You answer my questions. I'll determine what's lawful." The wide-angle CCTV camera mounted on a concrete pillar captured the scene in its entirety. The uniformed officer, visibly agitated, gesturing erratically, and the civilian woman standing perfectly still, a portrait of unnerving calm. It was in this moment that Officer Dunn made the decision that would seal his fate. He interpreted her refusal to be intimidated as active resistance. "That's it," he declared, his mind made up. "You're being uncooperative. You're obstructing my investigation." He reached for his handcuffs, the metallic click echoing in the cavernous space. "I said I'm done talking. You're coming with me." He lunged forward and grabbed her arm. The moment his fingers closed around her wrist, Officer Dunn transitioned from a procedural violation to a criminal act.
It was a mistake that would be measured not in seconds, but in years of his life and millions of taxpayer dollars. What would you have done in Judge Hayes' position? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe in the power of documented evidence to bring about justice, make sure to subscribe for more factual accounts. The confrontation reached its critical inflection point at precisely 2:36 p.m., a moment documented with chilling clarity by the unblinking lens of Officer Dunn's body camera. Frustrated by Judge Hayes' unflinching composure and her refusal to conform to his prejudiced narrative, he abandoned all pretense of a lawful stop. His decision was to escalate, to use the physical force of his office to break her will. He moved forward, his intent clear, reaching for her arm to initiate an arrest for the fabricated charges of disorderly conduct and resisting. It was at this exact moment, the instant his skin made contact with hers, that the fundamental power dynamic of the encounter was irrevocably inverted. Judge Hayes did not flinch or pull away. Her voice, when she spoke, was not raised in anger or fear, but was instead imbued with a profound and absolute authority that seemed to momentarily alter the acoustics of the concrete garage. "Officer, before you commit a felony for violation of civil rights under color of law, I suggest you listen to me. My name is Evelyn Hayes. I am a United States federal judge for the District Court for the District of Columbia. And your body camera, along with the 12 cameras in this building, are recording this illegal act. Release my arm immediately." The statement was a weapon, delivered with the precision of a legal scalpel. The CCTV footage from Camera 7, which offered a clear profile view of Officer Dunn, shows a microsecond of hesitation, a brief cognitive dissonance as his brain struggled to process the information. But his confirmation bias was a fortress. The possibility that this woman, in these clothes, in this context, could be the authority she claimed was simply beyond his capacity to accept. To him, it was not a revelation of truth, but the desperate, audacious bluff of a cornered criminal. A condescending smirk touched his lips. "Nice try," he scoffed, his voice dripping with derision. Add impersonating a judicial officer to the list. He tightened his grip and, with a swift, practiced motion, pulled her arm behind her back, the metallic ratcheting of the handcuffs echoing sharply in the quiet garage. He had made his choice. He had rejected the truth and embraced his own flawed judgment as fact.
He keyed his shoulder mic, his voice laced with the self-satisfied tone of a man who believes he has won. He reported the arrest of an aggressive, uncooperative female. The transmission was logged. The call had gone out, officially documenting the beginning of his own end. The transmission from Officer Dunn's radio crackled into the dispatch center at 2:41 p.m., a routine log entry that was anything but. His voice, captured on the official audio recording, was tight with misplaced pride as he reported securing an aggressive female suspect for obstruction, resisting, and, most damningly, the impersonation of a judicial official. He had her seated in the back of his patrol car now, her wrists bound behind her by the department-issued steel cuffs. To Dunn, this was the satisfying conclusion of a challenge to his authority. He saw her composure not as dignity, but as the final silent act of a criminal who had run out of tricks. The CCTV camera positioned above the garage exit captured him leaning against his vehicle, a picture of smug satisfaction, completely oblivious to the procedural storm his words had just unleashed. The phrase impersonation of a judicial official was a key word, a tripwire in the dispatch system designed to immediately flag the communication for supervisory review. Within seconds, the alert pinged on the terminal of Sergeant David Miller, a 20-year veteran of the force and Dunn's direct supervisor, who was patrolling less than a mile away. The location, the nature of the claim, and the officer involved set off alarm bells honed by 2 decades of experience. Miller didn't hesitate. He acknowledged the call and activated his lights and siren, the urgency of his response a stark premonition of the disaster he was racing towards. At 2:48 p.m., Sergeant Miller's vehicle screeched to a halt behind Dunn's patrol car, the flashing blue and red lights painting the concrete walls in strobing hues of panic. The security camera footage shows Miller exiting his car not with the calm stride of a supervisor arriving for a routine check, but with the haste of a man trying to stop a bomb from detonating. His eyes immediately scanned the scene, Dunn looking confused by the dramatic arrival and the figure in the back of the patrol car. The angle of the glass and the glare of the overhead lights momentarily obscured the occupant's face, but as Miller drew closer, his pace faltered. He stopped dead. The audio from his own body camera, which he had activated upon exiting his vehicle, recorded a sharp intake of breath. He recognized her instantly. It was the Honorable Evelyn Hayes. He had seen her picture in department briefings, attended security details at the federal courthouse where she presided, and knew her reputation for being as brilliant as she was uncompromising. The blood drained from his face.
The reality of what his subordinate had done hit him with the force of a physical blow. He keyed his radio, his voice a choked, frantic whisper that was broadcast across the channel for all to hear. "Dunn, what did you do? Let her go, now! That's the federal judge!" The words struck Officer Dunn with a disorienting, concussive force. For a moment, he simply stared at his supervisor, his mind refusing to process the information. It was impossible, a lie, a trick. But the raw, unadulterated terror in Sergeant Miller's eyes was undeniable. The entire power structure of the universe seemed to tilt on its axis. Miller didn't wait for a response. He strode past the frozen Dunn, his movements now a desperate ballet of damage control. He pulled the key from Dunn's belt, unlocked the rear door of the patrol car, and opened it with a deference typically reserved for visiting heads of state. The camera on Dunn's own vest recorded the scene in perfect, damning clarity. "Judge Hayes, on behalf of the entire Metropolitan Police Department, I offer our most sincere and profound apologies." Miller's voice was strained, formal, and trembling with the weight of the impending legal catastrophe. "This officer's actions are inexcusable, and he will be removed from duty immediately." As Miller carefully helped the judge from the vehicle, Dunn's gaze remained fixed on her. The woman he had profiled, insulted, and assaulted was not a suspect. She was the very embodiment of the system he had sworn to serve, an authority so far above his own that he could not even comprehend it until it was too late. His smugness evaporated, replaced by a cold, hollowing dread. The click of the handcuffs being unlocked was the loudest sound he had ever heard. It was the sound of his career, his pension, and his freedom being irrevocably canceled. Justice only works when it applies to everyone, including those sworn to uphold it. If you believe in accountability, hit the like button and subscribe to see the full, devastating consequences for Officer Dunn. The arrival of Sergeant Miller's patrol car at 2:48 p.m. was not a routine supervisory check. It was an emergency response. The CCTV footage from the garage entrance captures the vehicle braking hard, its tires barking against the smooth concrete, coming to a stop directly behind Unit 714. The flashing lights, previously muted by the bright fluorescent overheads, now pulsed with an urgent, almost frantic rhythm, painting the scene in strobing shades of red and blue. Sergeant David Miller, a man whose 20 years on the force had etched a permanent calm onto his features, exited his vehicle with a speed that betrayed deep alarm. The audio from his own body camera, activated the moment he stepped out, captures the sound of his heavy breathing and the rapid crunch of his boots on the floor. His initial scan of the scene took in Officer Dunn, who was leaning against his patrol car with a look of casual proprietary authority. Dunn's posture straightened, a flicker of confusion crossing his face at the intensity of his supervisor's arrival. But Miller's gaze swept past him, drawing inexorably to the rear passenger side window of Dunn's cruiser. He took 5 quick steps forward, then stopped abruptly, as if he had walked into an invisible wall. The glare from the overhead lights on the tinted glass momentarily obscured the occupant, but as Miller shifted his angle, the face within became clear. His body camera recorded a sharp, audible gasp. He knew that face. He had seen it in department-wide security briefings, in news reports, and on posters at the entrance to the E. Barrett Prettyman United States Courthouse, where he had twice been assigned to a supplemental security detail. It was Judge Evelyn Hayes. The blood drained from Miller's face, a physical reaction of pure, unadulterated dread. The entire context of the call, the location, the charge of impersonating a judicial official, and Dunn's known history of confrontational stops snapped into a horrifyingly clear picture. He fumbled for his shoulder mic, his hand shaking slightly. The transmission that followed, logged at 2:49 p.m., was broadcast across the entire district channel, a public and permanent record of the moment Officer Dunn's career was officially pronounced dead. "Dunn, what did you do?" The words were a choked, frantic cry, stripped of all professional decorum. "Let her go, now! That's the federal judge!" For Officer Dunn, the broadcast was a sonic boom that shattered his reality. He stared blankly at Miller, his mind physically unable to reconcile his supervisor's raw panic with the woman sitting in his back seat. It was a glitch in his worldview, an impossibility that the system, in the form of Sergeant Miller, was screaming was true. The universe of the subterranean garage had been completely reordered. Sergeant Miller, now operating on pure adrenaline-fueled damage control, didn't wait for a response from the stunned officer. He strode past Dunn as if he were a piece of scenery, his focus singular and absolute, mitigating the catastrophic legal and financial liability his subordinate had just created. The body camera on Dunn's own vest, still recording, became the primary witness to his public humiliation, capturing Miller's every desperate action in excruciating detail. Miller reached out and, without a word, unclipped the handcuff key from Dunn's duty belt. Dunn offered no resistance, his arms hanging limply at his sides, his expression a vacant mask of shock. The metallic jingle of the keys was a sound of profound finality. Miller moved to the rear door of the patrol car, his movements swift but imbued with a new, almost absurd level of deference. He unlocked the door and pulled it open, the interior light illuminating the calm, composed face of Judge Hayes. She looked not at Dunn, but directly at Sergeant Miller, her expression unreadable, but radiating an authority that now seemed to fill the entire garage. Judge Hayes, on behalf of the entire Metropolitan Police Department, I offer our most sincere and profound apologies. Miller's voice was strained, trembling with the effort of maintaining his composure. This officer's actions are inexcusable, and he will be removed from duty immediately. He leaned in, carefully guiding the judge out of the vehicle and immediately unlocking the steel cuffs from her wrists. The soft metallic click of the cuffs releasing was the punctuation mark on Dunn's career. As Judge Hayes stood, rubbing her wrists almost imperceptibly, the full weight of the situation finally crashed down on Dunn. He was not looking at a suspect he had misidentified. He was looking at the living embodiment of the federal judicial system he had just assaulted. The woman he had accused of not belonging was, in fact, an authority so far beyond his own that she could, with a single phone call, end his life as he knew it. The arrogance that had fueled his actions for the past 15 minutes evaporated, replaced by a cold, hollowing certainty of his own ruin. Sergeant Miller, after ensuring the judge was unharmed, turned his attention back to Dunn for the first time. His face was a grim mask of fury and disappointment. "Dunn," he said, his voice low and dangerously steady, "your weapon and your badge. Now." It was not a request. It was the first official act in a procedural demolition that would leave nothing of his career behind. The fallout for the man who was, until 2:50 p.m. on April 12, 2023, known as Officer Kevin Dunn, was not a gradual decline, but a procedural and societal freefall. The official record of his downfall, meticulously documented in the subsequent internal affairs, criminal, and civil case files, serves as a textbook example of absolute and quantifiable karmic justice. The process began the moment Sergeant Miller, his face a mask of cold fury, instructed him to place his badge and service weapon on the hood of his patrol car. The drive back to the precinct was silent, a funereal procession marking the end of a 12-year career. Dunn was immediately placed on administrative leave without pay, a preliminary step that was in reality a formality. The Internal Affairs investigation, case file 880/23, was opened and closed within a record-setting 72 hours. The evidence was not just compelling, it was absolute. In a sterile interview room, Dunn was forced to watch the entire 15-minute encounter from 4 different angles simultaneously. His own body camera, Sergeant Miller's body camera, and 2 separate CCTV feeds from the garage. He saw his own aggression, heard his own prejudiced words, "You don't look like you belong here," and witnessed his own catastrophic miscalculation in high-definition clarity. His police union representative, after viewing the first 5 minutes of the footage, quietly advised him to offer no statement, and then left the room, effectively abandoning a case that was legally and morally indefensible. The termination letter, delivered 2 days later, cited gross misconduct, violation of department policy on biased policing, unlawful arrest, and conduct unbecoming of an officer. With that, his annual salary of $105,000 ceased, and his claim to a public pension, once valued at over $800,000 upon retirement, was irrevocably forfeited. His professional life was over. The criminal consequences followed with an even greater and more public velocity. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, spurred by the egregious nature of the offense against a sitting federal judge, took up the case directly. Kevin Dunn was indicted on federal charges, specifically a violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 242, the deprivation of rights under color of law, and a district charge of false imprisonment. His trial was short. The prosecution's case consisted almost entirely of playing the video evidence for the jury. Judge Hayes was called as a witness, her testimony lasting less than 20 minutes. She did not editorialize or offer emotional statements. She simply authenticated the events as they appeared on the screen, her calm and factual recounting serving as a stark contrast to the agitated, unprofessional figure of Dunn in the footage. The jury deliberated for just 45 minutes before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. At his sentencing, the presiding judge called his actions a betrayal of the public trust and an insult to the very laws he had sworn to uphold.
Kevin Dunn was sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in a federal correctional institution, followed by 3 years of supervised release. He was also ordered to pay a personal fine of $25,000. The final, and perhaps most publicly resonant consequence, was financial.
To avert a protracted and deeply embarrassing civil trial that would have put the city's policing practices under a federal microscope, the District of Columbia's legal counsel moved quickly to negotiate a settlement with Judge Hayes' attorneys. The final figure, paid from the city's liability fund, a pool of taxpayer money, was exactly $1.5 million. News reports detailed how this single act of prejudice cost every single taxpayer in the district a measurable sum. Judge Hayes, in a public statement released through her counsel, announced that a significant portion of the settlement would be donated to the Innocence Project and a scholarship fund for minority law students. While Kevin Dunn's name became a byword for disgraced officers, a cautionary tale taught in police academies across the country about the tangible cost of bias, Judge Evelyn Hayes continued her work on the federal bench. Her authority, far from being undermined by the incident, was solidified. She had faced down a direct physical challenge to her rights and her legitimacy, not with anger, but with an unshakable command of the law she represented. The incident became an invisible footnote to her already distinguished career, a testament to her character. For Dunn, the ruin was absolute. He lost his career, his freedom, his reputation, and his financial future. Was a lesson truly learned by the system that produced him? Or was his downfall simply the inevitable, documented outcome when a baseless prejudice collides with an immovable object of the law? The unblinking eye of the camera recorded the answer, leaving no room for doubt. Have you ever witnessed a situation where someone's prejudice cost them everything? Share your story in the comments below. And if you believe in the power of irrefutable evidence to deliver justice, share this account with others.